The midwife's hands trembled as she held the second baby, her eyes wide with shock. It can't be. Bako took one step back, his voice hoarse with fear. This one is cursed. Under the vast sky of a quiet savannah village, where drums echoed during full moons and spirits were said to dance with the wind, lived Mama Lomi, a gentle cloth weaver with hands that worked magic into every thread. Her husband, Bako, was the village's finest hunter, tall, proud, respected. He had eyes like sharp arrows and a heart carved by tradition. They lived simply but with honor. Their heart was humble, their meals modest, but their love was the kind that grew roots deeper than the old baobab tree near the village center. It was beneath that very sacred baobab tree, believed to be blessed by the ancestors, that Lomi went into labor. She had dreamed of twins. In her vision, one child held sunlight in her palms. The other, she could not see, only shadows wrapped in moonlight. The labor was long and painful. Villagers gathered around the tree, offering prayers, lighting incense, and beating soft rhythms on drums to welcome new life. The first cry ran out like a song, strong, clear, and defiant. The baby girl had golden skin that shimmered under the dawnlight. She was beautiful. Perfect. They named her Naya, meaning brightness in their tongue. But then came silence. The second child entered the world with no sound, her skin pale and cool. Across her face was a dark crescent-shaped birthmark, curved like the moon just before it disappears. The midwife held her breath. Bako frowned. "What is that?" he asked, his voice cold. "That mark, it is a sign." The midwife hesitated, eyes darting nervously toward the tree's twisted roots. Some say the moon spirits leave their mark on chosen ones. But Bako's face hardened. Or cursed ones. He refused to hold the second baby. Wouldn't even look into her eyes. "She brings something dark," he muttered. "Something wrong. She shouldn't have been born under the baobab." Mama Lomi clutched both children tightly, her voice firm despite her pain. "She is mine. Both of them are mine. Spirit marked or not, I will raise her." The whispers began. The village elders gathered quietly near the tree, watching from under their cloaks. Some nodded with approval, saying the moon child was a blessing in disguise, a sign of balance, sun and moon, day and night, both born of love. Others looked away, crossing their fingers in fear, mumbling that such a child would bring misfortune or strange happenings. But Lomi didn't care. She named the second baby Zuri, meaning beautiful one, though Bako refused to say it. He turned away, arms crossed. "Only Naya will carry my name," he whispered. As the sun climbed and the baobab tree cast long shadows over the earth, Mama Lomi rocked both daughters in her arms, one glowing like day, the other still and quiet like night. And somewhere in the wind that blew through the branches, the ancestors listened. Naya raced barefoot through the village market, laughter trailing behind her like petals in the wind. In the shadows between two woven stalls, Zuri watched, quiet and still, always unseen, always unloved. 8 years had passed since the twins were born under the sacred baobab tree. In that time, their differences had only deepened. Naya, the golden daughter, was the village's pride. Her laughter made the elders smile. She danced in every festival, her footsteps in perfect rhythm with the drums. Vendors gifted her sweet mango slices, colorful bangles, and ribbons for her braids. When she walked through the village, people called out her name like it was a blessing. Naya, child of light. Naya, the golden sun. But Zuri was the shadow that followed Naya. She trailed behind her sister in silence, eyes full of wonder and hurt. Where Naya was greeted with praise, Zuri was met with turnbacks or forced smiles. Some whispered cruel things as she passed, moon-cursed, tree-child, wrong-born. Children mocked her. "Why don't you cry like the rest of us?" they said. "Why do the birds land near you like pets?" Even at home, Bako barely looked at her. He had built a small family shrine beside their hut, candles, feathers, and carvings of their ancestors. Zuri wasn't allowed near it. Only those who carry light can face the ancestors, he'd say sharply if she dared to approach. But Mama Lomi, oh, her love remained a quiet fire. By night, Lomi would call Zuri softly into the back garden, where the moonlight touched the herbs. She taught her to recognize the signs of the earth, which roots could heal a fever, which leaves whispered when danger came. She sang songs in forgotten languages, and Zuri's voice would blend in harmony, even as Lomi wiped away silent tears. Zuri didn't complain. Not once. She never asked why people feared her. But strange things had begun to happen around her. Birds came to her without fear. A baby in the village once wailed for hours, until Zuri touched its forehead, and it calmed instantly. She knew when rain would come, even on cloudless days. She once warned a boy not to climb a certain tree. Hours later, a branch snapped where he would have been. Mama Lomi began to suspect what others had not yet dared to say aloud. Zuri was different, yes, but not cursed. Gifted. Chosen. But Bako refused to see. And when the harvest festival approached, a time of dancing, gratitude, and offerings to the spirits, he made a firm decree. Zuri will not attend. She will bring misfortune. Lomi argued quietly, but Bako's word was law. So Zuri stayed home, sitting beneath the baobab with her eyes closed, breathing slowly. That night, as drums echoed across the village and lanterns floated downriver, Zuri awoke from a dream. In it, she saw Naya running along the riverbank and falling in. The water swallowed her, and no one heard her cries. She ran barefoot across fields, past tattered goats, following the dream's path. By the time she reached the river, Naya's voice was barely a gasp. Her legs had slipped on wet moss while trying to retrieve a floating lantern. She was caught in the current, fighting to stay above water. Without hesitation, Zuri dove in. She moved like someone who had swum in that river her whole life. With a strength no one had seen in her, she grabbed her sister and pulled her ashore. Naya coughed, cried, then clung to Zuri, shaking. Villagers soon arrived, drawn by Naya's screams. They wrapped the golden child in cloth, offered blessings, praised the spirits. When Bako came, he didn't ask who had saved her. He knelt beside Naya and lifted his hands to the sky. Thank the gods. Thank her spirit protectors. They watch over the child of light. Zuri stood there, soaking wet, shivering, her lip trembling, not from the cold, but from the pain of being invisible. Not one word. Not one glance. That night, Mama Lomi wept beside the baobab tree, the same place her daughters were born. She looked up at the moon, its crescent shape glowing faintly like the mark on Zuri's face. Her voice broke as she whispered, "What kind of man cannot see the miracle before him?" Inside the house, Bako knelt by the family shrine, lighting incense and thanking spirits who had done nothing. Outside, Zuri sat alone, humming the song her mother had taught her, low and haunting, carried away by the wind. The sky turned black at noon. Thunder roared across the hills like 1,000 angry drums. Then the stranger came, soaked in rain, wrapped in shadow. He pointed at Zuri and said, "The child with the mark, she is the reason I came." The winds began 2 days before the storm. Gentle at first. Whispers. The kind of breeze that made leaves rustle in warning. Then came the real storm, violent, unnatural, angry. Crops that once stretched proudly toward the sun withered overnight. Fruits fell before ripening. Birds stopped singing. Even the goats grew restless, pawing at the ground and refusing to eat. The dogs howled at nothing. And in the forest, silence. The animals had vanished, all of them. The village murmured about spirits. About curses. About wrong things awakening. Then came the traveler. He arrived at the edge of the village just after nightfall, leaning on a carved staff taller than himself. His robe was stitched with stars, his beard streaked with silver, and his eyes shone like fireflies in twilight. He called himself Elder Tembo, and said he had walked across deserts, rivers, and sleeping volcanoes, led by dreams. "Something is broken here," he said. "I have seen it in my sleep." The villagers gathered around, unsure whether to welcome or fear him. Mama Lomi brought him warm broth and offered him shelter in the goat hut. Tembo accepted kindly, bowing low. But when Zuri peeked out from behind the chicken coop, curiosity in her wide eyes, Elder Tembo stopped mid-sentence. He slowly walked toward her, then, to everyone's surprise, he dropped to one knee and bowed his head. "The moon child. I have waited for you." Gasps echoed through the gathering. Zuri stepped back, unsure if she was being honored or accused. Her fingers clenched the edge of her tunic, heart racing. From the crowd, a furious voice thundered. "Enough." Bako shoved his way through, his hunting spear slung across his back. His face was dark with fury. "She is my child," he snapped. "Not a prophet. Not a symbol. Take your madness elsewhere." Tembo met his gaze calmly. "She is not yours, hunter. She belongs to the earth and the stars. I am merely the messenger." Without a word, Bako pointed away from the village. Two younger men escorted Tembo from the gathering. Lomi tried to speak, but her husband's glare silenced her. But Elder Tembo was not done. The next morning, he stood before the village elders, who gathered beneath the council tree. He spoke of visions, of fire-swallowing forests, of rivers turning black, of people screaming for a savior who would not come. And then he gave them a choice. The child marked by the moon, she will save this land, or let it die. The spirits have chosen. Now the people must choose. The council didn't answer. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at the ground. But a few looked up at the old stranger, and then at the girl with the moon-shaped birthmark. Later that day, an old woman with cloudy eyes approached Zuri. Her name was Nana Binta. She hadn't spoken much in years. She pressed a small drum into Zuri's hands. It was cracked and worn, but the leather was soft and warm. "Sing to the forest, little one," she whispered. "It listens to you. It remembers." Zuri clutched the drum and nodded, even though she didn't understand. Not yet. That night, the storm returned, but only in her sleep. In her dream, she stood in the center of the village. Fire danced on rooftops, flames chasing screaming villagers. The baobab tree was burning, its ancient limbs cracking in the heat. The shrine was gone. The market turned to ash. And Zuri, she stood alone, her bare feet on cracked earth, her drum in her hands. Behind her, darkness whispered, "Let them fall." Ahead, a soft voice begged, "Stand. Speak. Sing." She woke up gasping. The crescent moon outside her window glowed brighter than usual, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of it. The river turned black. The sky was red. The trees whispered in fear. And standing among it all, eyes glowing softly like moonlight on still water, Zuri smiled. But it was not a smile of joy. It was a smile of knowing. Of understanding something terrible, and something sacred. The change came slowly, like a warning ignored. First, the earth cracked beneath the yam fields. Deep, silent fissures spread like spider webs through the soil. Crops rotted without reason. The village well, a place of laughter and gossip, ran dry overnight, leaving only a sour smell and thick black mud at the bottom. Then came the flies. Thousands of them. Thick swarms that filled the sky, buzzing so loudly they drowned out the birdsong. The elders called it the mourning of the earth. Worse still, children began to fall ill. Fevers with no name. Skin turned hot as coals. Eyes rolled back. Their cries grew faint like distant winds. Even the strongest fell. Even Naya. One moment she was running barefoot through the banana groves, her laughter chasing butterflies. The next, she was lying still, lips pale, breath slow. Mama Lomi held her for hours, wiping sweat from her brow, whispering stories, praying to every spirit she knew by name. The healers tried root teas, fire baths, river pebbles, but nothing helped. Lomi's voice cracked with desperation. Please, let Zuri try. Bako stood at the door, silent. His face was carved from stone. For a long time, he said nothing. His pride was loud. But the sound of his daughter's weak breathing was louder. At last, he nodded once. Just once. Zuri was brought into the hut. Her hands trembled, but her gaze was steady. She saw her sister, fading. She felt the earth pulsing beneath her feet like a slow, dying drum. She touched Naya's forehead, gently, like touching dew on a flower. Then she closed her eyes and began to sing. But it was no song the villagers knew. It was older than the shrine. Older than the village. A song in a forgotten tongue, one she had never learned, but somehow knew by heart. The candles in the hut flickered blue. The shadows danced. The fever broke like a wave hitting the shore. Naya's eyes fluttered open. Zuri, she whispered. And then she smiled. Mama Lomi screamed, not in fear, but in pure, aching relief. She grabbed both daughters and held them to her chest, sobbing. Bako stood by the doorway, unmoving. Then, without a word, he turned and walked into the forest, disappearing between the trees. No one saw him again that night. Word spread fast. The next evening, the entire village gathered beneath the baobab tree. Not for punishment. Not for mourning. But to listen. For the first time, Zuri stood at the center. Children she once feared to speak to now reached for her hands. Elders bowed their heads. Even the coldest hearts began to thaw. She looked around, not proud, not angry, but sure. I will help, she said. I will ask the earth to listen. I will sing to the river. I will walk the dreaming paths. But only if you promise me something. Never again will you call a child cursed. Never again will you turn away from one who is different. There was a long silence. Then the oldest elder, a man whose skin was as wrinkled as dry bark, stepped forward. He fell to his knees and whispered, "We promise." The others followed, one by one. That night, Zuri walked to the forest edge and placed her drum against the soil. She sang again. This time, louder. This time, the wind carried her voice far into the trees. And deep beneath the cracked ground, something ancient stirred. Years later, they carved her name into stone. But even then, some still whispered behind folded palms. She was once the child no one wanted. The sun rose soft and golden, shining gently through the mist that curled around the sacred baobab tree. Zuri stood alone beneath its branches, now grown taller than any of the elders remembered. A circle of villagers watched from a respectful distance, silent, reverent. Even the wind paused to listen. She held her drum close. Its skin was faded, worn from the years, but still strong. She had waited for this day. The final song. The last thread in the healing she began long ago. Her voice rose, not loud, but deep. It carried weight. Memory. Power. As she sang, the ground seemed to breathe. The old river, once a dark scar, began to stir. A trickle, then a stream, then a rushing song of water. Crops burst green and full, climbing joyfully toward the sun. Sickness lifted like fog. The old smiled. The young danced. The village lived again. As the people celebrated, a figure appeared between the trees. It was Bako. Older. Slower. eyes dimmed by years of shame. He stepped forward alone, walked past the crowd, and knelt before his daughter. His voice cracked. I was wrong. He reached for her hand, but didn't take it. You were never cursed. I was. Zuri looked at him, not with anger. Not with pity. But with something deeper. Something that healed more than wounds. She placed her hand gently on his head. And whispered a blessing. The people wept quietly. Some fell to their knees. Because in that moment, a wound older than the sickness was finally healed. Time passed. Zuri became more than a healer. She became the voice of the forest, the guardian of dreams, the spirit singer of the land. She did not wear a crown. She wore a string of river stones and moon-shaped beads. She did not demand loyalty. She earned it in silence, in song, in service. Naya stood proudly beside her, no longer just the golden twin, but the voice of reason, the hand of protection. Together, they rebuilt the family shrine, not as it was, but as it should have been, open to all. 2 hands carved into the stone. One golden. One moon-marked. During festivals, the village children painted silver crescents on their cheeks and danced barefoot under the stars. They sang the songs Zuri taught them. Born beneath the baobab tree. The moon marked one and the sun set free. One was loved, the other unseen. But both became what legends mean. In the final scene, an old woman with cloudy eyes sits under the baobab tree with 2 children curled beside her. One child asks, "Grandmother, is it true? The moon girl healed the land." The old woman smiles, slow and warm. Once, a father rejected his daughter. But the gods chose her to heal us all. And she did. The children blink wide-eyed. Where is she now? One asks. The old woman points to the tree. Right here. Listen closely, you can still hear her song when the wind moves through the leaves. And as the breeze gently stirs, the children close their eyes. They hear it. A hum. A lullaby. A promise. Final line. And under the baobab tree, legends still bloom.